unfortunately, the scary thing about the grain-free diets is that a lot of times you can't see the symptoms. So this dilative cardiomyopathy, the heart starts to kind of weaken and dilate and get weaker and bigger over time. I have Emma Stats with me, our medical team manager, and we have Moosey here today. Will you say Moose? Huh? Say hey. You speak? Speak. Oh, that's a good boy. Look at that. So today we want to talk about nutrition. Emma just came back from a in-depth course at Hills Pet Nutrition, and also there's been a lot of stuff in the news about some scary stuff about dog food, and some of it's real. Oh, yeah. So some of the stuff you find on the internet is real, and some of it's crazy, and we're here to talk about that and sort that out. So Emma, tell us where you just came back from.
Oh, so I did the Hills Transforming Lives tour in Kansas. Dr. Shanu and I both went. It was a 3-day tour, and we toured the nutritional testing facility and the Emporia plant, which makes some of their dry kibbles.
Yeah.
We really learned a lot. It was a good opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I've done a similar tour with Hills and with Royal Canin in my research on, finding the best pet foods for our clients. And what I was very impressed with was these people are very smart. There's scientists and veterinarians and nutritionists and PhDs and people with many, many letters after the end of their name.
When we went to the Emporia plant, we learned a lot about the processes, about how they make the kibble. Rather than like weighing each dry ingredient and tearing it out and weighing the next one and tearing it out, they have all of their ingredients stored in big bins that they know how much weight is in, so they just release the amount that they need of each ingredient. They make a whole batch and then they send it to the next step. When they cook the actual kibble, because they make it into almost kind of like a dough, and when they cook the kibble, which they call the kill step, which kills any microorganisms that might be in there, when it comes out and they cut it, it almost feels like, because we got to feel it, it feels like bread almost, which is kind of cool. And then it goes through a drying process, and then it comes out the other end looking more like the kibble that we.
Yeah. So, but if you sit down and talk to these nutritionists, it blows your mind how much they know.
We talked about
goes into it.
There's a lot now out there that goes in, like that people are talking about the microbiome. So that one was like, it was like a lot. I was like, I need more of this, because it's a big topic, but it wasn't a long enough class.
So the quality pet foods are really high science. It's really, there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot of man hours and a lot of research. This scary thing that we've been hearing about dogs with heart failure, and it seems to be linked to grain-free foods. It's there's a good article by a nutritionist out of Tufts, is a veterinary nutritionist, and she's been working on this project. She's found that it's not only grain-free foods, but she's saying it's these boutique food companies, or it's like the smaller pet food companies. So a lot of people don't know is that the regulations on pet foods and human foods are very different. So a pet food is considered a feed. A lot of open loopholes and ways for people to get around it. So like I could make my own pet food. I could call it whatever I want to. Or I might say it's Grandma Smith's home style natural food, and you think my grandma's in there in the kitchen cooking, and I can put a picture of chicken breast on there, and I can put a picture of corn and peas and whatever I want on the bag, and it looks like it's a home-cooked meal, but that doesn't say anything about what's actually in the food. And actually, I don't even have to cook it myself. I can farm that out to another company that may say, I just ran 1,000 bags of whatever food, and then they say they're going to run Dr. Jeff's food, we're going to do 100 bags for you, and use the same equipment and same ingredients or different ingredients or whatever, and not have to clean the equipment in between, as long as it's sanitary and under the certain guidelines. So if you have a dog that's sensitive to certain proteins and things like that, it depends on where the food was made, if it was made in a facility that was used with the same other proteins.
And what a lot of people don't know too, which I learned while I was away at Hills, they don't know to look for the AFCO statement. Usually it is so super tiny on that bag, you can't even find it anywhere, but it's really good to know to look for that, because that will tell you what life stages that food is appropriate for. A lot of foods and food products, treats, things like that, things you'd be surprised if you knew that it says for intermittent feeding only, not good for growth or development. A lot of them say all life stages, which isn't appropriate for you know, gestation, things like that.
So shoot us a comment if you have a favorite food, or if you think that, you know, if you know of any good foods, you know any bad foods, please list them below in the comments. One of the things about this heart failure thing is seems to be heavily linked to the grain-free diets. Now and it causes a type of heart failure called dilated cardiomyopathy. And what we found is that these dogs get the dilated cardiomyopathy not on the first day, but after they've been eating this food for several months or even a year. And so that makes us think that maybe there's some kind of a nutritional deficiency. You know, you're not getting enough of something, and then your heart gets weaker over time because you're just starving yourself of that ingredient. And
actually, they've linked it now. There's a study where they're starting to look into litters of puppies from mothers that were fed grain-free diets. I think it was golden retrievers, wasn't it? It was a golden retriever. She was fed grain-free her whole life. Had a litter of puppies. It was 8 or more. It was a large litter. They all had it. They all had it. Had
the heart problem.
Yeah.
We know in cats that if cats don't get taurine, they will get this dilated cardiomyopathy. Well, cat's different than a dog, but we first found that out. Said, maybe it's a taurine thing. Well, they found in dogs it's not the taurine that's in the food. It's something else. And so is it a deficiency of something, or is it an overage of something, you know, that's in the food because of the grain-free? But then they've since found that in some of these other diets, these smaller boutique companies, they don't have the right nutritional balance, and they're having the same problem, even if it's not a grain-free food. I think the grain-free thing, it started from people who are gluten intolerant or gluten insensitive or whatever you call it. So people can't have grains or glutens. And then all of a sudden it came out in the media that gluten is bad and grain is bad. And so a lot of it is advertising. If grain-free is what's going to sell, they're going to put grain-free on their label.
Yeah, it is. It's marketing, really.
Marketing, yeah. So unfortunately, the scary thing about the grain-free diets is that a lot of times you can't see the symptoms. So this dilated cardiomyopathy, the heart starts to kind of weaken and dilate and get weaker and bigger over time, and until it reaches a certain point that the blood flow is actually inhibited, then you start to get heart failure and you get coughing and wheezing, and they just can't run like they used to, and they just don't have the energy that they used to. And unfortunately, some of these signs are reversible and some of them are not reversible. So it's a scary thing. There's a lot of scientists and nutritionists working overtime on this to try to figure out what the cause is. But in the meantime, I would say consult your veterinarian and get a good quality food. And you know, there's a reason why we have 700 different foods on our shelves here, is because each one is for a different specific need, and every pet's a little different. You should talk to your vet and get a customized recommendation for your pet.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have real concerns, you know, like I do, he when he was developing, the whole time he was on grain-free, I mean, you know, come in and see us or go to your veterinarian and talk about maybe, you know, a referral for a cardio consult if you know, because to start looking into it early and see if there's any of those developmental issues is
so
key.
We have, you know, just like in human medicine, we have different specialties. We have a veterinary cardiologist that we can send you to down in Winston-Salem, maybe at NC State if you're a preference there. They can do an echocardiogram. They do an ultrasound of the dog's heart and you can see inside the heart and see the valves of the heart and see how it's working, and do measurements to see the size of the heart and the heart muscle, and they can see if there's a problem there.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to reiterate what you were saying, every dog is different, just like every person is different. They have different nutritional needs. I mean, I have 2 30-pound herding breed mixes. They do not even eat the same food. I mean, he's on the HP and my other one's on Hill's oral care because that's just what is best for him. So really just coming in and finding out what their needs are, and we can help you with that.
But what we found in research is that there's very few dogs that have any gluten allergies or grain allergies. They're usually allergic to a beef or a meat protein.
Right.
So meat or a beef or chicken or pork or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's why I guess the soy protein in the Royal Canin is a good anti-allergy protein, because they're less likely to be allergic to it.
And for me, I mean, I'm really environmentally conscious, and it's very sustainable too, and that's really important to me, because I could have tried them on something like, you know, something exotic like kangaroo or something like that, but is that sustainable? Not really.
Right.
So I tried chicken feathers. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a lot of those around, and,
Yeah.
and then the soy is really sustainable. So
Mhm.
for people out there that's important. You know, an ingredient could very well be in a food that's not regulated by veterinary nutritionists, but is it bioavailable? Are they able to digest it and
Mhm.
get the nutrients that they need out of that food?
Yeah.
You don't know, and a
Mhm.
lot of times, I mean, they don't digest
Yeah.
things the same the way that we do. So a lot of
Right.
times, no.
Yeah.
So
So that's something in good pet foods. What they do is they get high quality ingredients, and then they process them down to grind them down very small.
Mhm.
So like if you have a chunk of bone that's in the food, for example, to over exaggerate, you got a chunk of bone like that, it's got a huge amount of calcium in it. But that dog swallows that down, it goes right out the other end. There's no calcium that's being absorbed.
right.
So if you have to find a bioavailable calcium and make it small enough and put it in the food.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
that's the thing about it is that it's. I mean, I think processing is a scary word. People don't like process things,
Yeah.
but really what they're doing is they're making these ingredients small enough
Mhm.
and fine enough to be digested well.
Yeah.
And so you'll see improvements in all kinds of ways, you know, of course,
Mhm.
in their overall well-being, depending on what diet you're eating. You know, skin and coat, you'll see improved stool quality. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that I have seen that in my dogs
Right.
a lot. So.
Right. Well, I know my little Chihuahuas, it's very helpful to be able to pick that up.
Yeah.
And have a nice quality stool, so you can appreciate that. One example of processing is corn. You know, if you take a kernel of corn and you swallow that down, sometimes it goes right out the other end and you're not digesting anything.
Right.
But if you take that corn and you peel the wrapper off of it and you grind it into a pulp, then it actually is one of the most complete vegetables you can get. Lots of carbohydrates and balanced nutrition and vitamins and minerals in there. That is very valuable. It has to be processed down to be able to be absorbed.
Right. A lot of people see that and they think it's a filler, but it's really not. It's actually like you're saying, one of the most complete sources of nutrition if it's processed properly. In these foods like Hills and Royal Canin that are formulated by veterinary nutritionists, you know that that's happening.
Right. Not all puppies are the same. The large breed puppies have big, strong bones, and they're going to be big, thick-bodied dogs, and they're going to grow really tall, so they need different nutrition. And what we found that feeding the small breed puppy food or the regular puppy food, sometimes they grow too fast, and they grow faster than their bones and their joints have a chance to develop, and they can have cartilage problems, they can have malformation of their joints and things like that. So a large breed formula is made for bigger dogs.
No, but he was having some issues with diarrhea, and I just couldn't pinpoint it. I tried a whole bunch of different proteins, and it turns out he actually has a food allergy. He's on the Royal Canin hydrolyzed protein, which is soy-based.
So did he break out in hives and get itchy, or just had the diarrhea?
He just had diarrhea, and so I wasn't like thinking that it was an allergy or anything like that, because he wasn't doing what he's doing now and having that itchiness or having any spots on him. And now he's almost 3 years old and it's progressed, and I really notice now when he gets something he shouldn't have, he does get itchy like that. His ears get inflamed. He'll hold up one down and lick his feet a lot, and so diet has really helped him. He's not on any medication, so.
So he is eating the hydrolyzed protein food.
He is,
by Royal Canin, which is a soy-based.
It is.
Yeah.
And he started with a food trial. He was on Ultimino, which is actually the protein is chicken feathers.
Right.
The body just doesn't recognize it as a chicken protein or a protein that it would recognize and be allergic to. So he started with that, did really well with it, and then we were trying to put stuff back in to see, and he does so well on the hydrolyzed protein. I just never switched him again.
Right. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. Yeah.